Welcome back to the channel, and in this tutorial I'm going to be showing you step by step how to make a raspberry in Blender procedurally using Blender's geometry node system. So you can see this is the node network here, and it looks like it's complicated and there's a lot of nodes, but it really is quite simple, and we're just going to be taking it step by step. So we're going to be starting by actually making the berry itself, which is these nodes over here. And then from there we're going to scatter some little hairs we're going to make to kind of make these little tendrily hair things that kind of come off the raspberry. And then we're going to join it all together. We'll also be jumping into our shading workspace and making these nice looking juicy berry materials. So if you want to learn how to do this, keep watching this tutorial. It's totally fun. And I will be uploading this result here to my Patreon. So those of you who are on the Patreon will be getting access to this blend file. But with all of that said, let's jump in and make this raspberry in Blender 4.2. In the new scene in Blender, I'm going to be using Blender 4.2. You're going to go ahead and select the default cube, and let's go over into our geometry nodes workspace. And if you want to, you can just drag this spreadsheet thing over here, just drag it to the side, it's fine. So you see our cube over here. Okay, so what we're going to do with our default cube selected, we're going to go ahead, and I guess first of all what we might do is just tab into edit mode, and with your cube selected, just right click and go subdivide, and then come over here to your subdivision tab and just give it like 2 subdivisions. And then what you can do is you can go over to your smooth tool and just kind of smooth it out. Honestly, just a shape like this would be fine. And then in your front view, you can simply just go ahead and kind of make it look like a berry shape, kind of like make it a bit pointy, something like that. And then tab back out and just simply go over to your modifiers and give it a subdivision surface modifier. Honestly, something really simple like that's all you need to do. I definitely wouldn't overdo any sort of details. Doesn't matter. It's just kind of just our base shape. Okay, so with that done, we're going to go ahead and give it a new geometry node system. We're going to click here and call it raspberry. And what we're going to do now is we want to actually put the little berries on here. So it's kind of like a whole bunch of little clusters on the raspberry. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to go ahead and we're going to go Shift A. We're going to click on search and type in distribute. And we're going to go to distribute points on faces. So now it's scattered all of these points on here. And I'll quickly move this up a little bit. In fact, this is optional, but what I'm going to do, I'm just going to minimize and close this window over here. You don't have to do that, but just for me, I'm going to go over here, drag out a new window and make that the 3D viewport. You guys can do whatever you want, but over here you should now be able to see. And what we're going to do is we want this distribution to be not quite as it is now. So we're going to come here to the random option, make it Poisson disk. And this will make more sense in a little bit, but for now, let's also just give it something. So for now, we're going to take these distribute points on faces, and we're going to put some instances on there. So we're going to go Shift A, search, and type in instance. And we're going to go instance on points, place it on here. And now we just need to give it something to instance. So we're going to drag on the instances, and we're going to let go and type in ico. And let's get an icosphere. And what we can do here is we can come and bump the subdivision level up to 3. And let's take this radius here. Let's make it 0.3. I think should be fine for now, just as something to start off with. And then we're going to come over here to the distance, and we want to take this min distance. Let's make it something like 0.3 as well. And then let's take this max density up until we kind of fill all of these spaces with our berry. Now in this case, if you want to, you can always bring the size down a little bit and then take the max density up until you kind of fill all of these spaces. So I'm going to maybe go with a bit of a smaller radius. It might be different for you, but something along this point. And I might just bump this up to like 6,000 over here. And I might just mess around with this min distance here, bringing it down a bit. But the idea here is just to have it kind of filling up as much as possible, something like that. Okay, but we don't want it to be too much overlapped. So something like that should work fine for this sort of scale. But the thing here that I really don't like is that it's kind of closed at the top, and it's actually supposed to be open. So we can just do that simply by taking our selection here on the instances on points, and let's just drag on that and let go, and let's just type in position. Let's grab a position node, And I'll grab these nodes over here and just move them over like that. So let's come over here to this position node. And let's say we want to work on the Z positions. We're going to go Shift A, search, and we're going to go separate. We're going to get a separate X, Y, Z. And we want to make sure it's the Z component going into the selection here. And now you can see it's removing the bottom instead of the top. So let's flip this around by going Shift A, search, and getting a map range. And let's place it on here. So this Z is going into this value. And we want to make sure it's a float, which it is. And we're going to come and swap these values around. So we're going to take the 0 and make it 1. And we're going to make the, or the min here, we're going to make it 1. And the max, let's make that 0. And then all we want to do is we want to take this min value here and let's just start bring it down just a little bit until we start to see it open up like that. So now we have an opening at the top. So it might be a bit of a different value for you, but you can kind of get the idea how we can achieve that. Okay, so it's just like that. I'm also just going to come here to the geometry output, and over here I'm just going to go Shift A, search, and get a set shade smooth. Place it over here. Now we get some smooth shading. So far we kind of have our raspberry here, but I want to randomize the size of the granules here a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'll grab these 3 nodes down here, and just to be organized, I'm going to go Control J and just put them in a group. I'm going to grab this group and move it down. I'm going to press N to bring up the properties panel. I'm going to go over to group and maybe nodes actually. Go to the node. I'm going to give it a color over here, something like this. Now let's come up here to the label and call it delete top. And I might just make the color a bit darker. So now we notice deletes the top. That's what that does. So if we ever want to come here, we can mess around with this value to open up the top. And we'll kind of keep these nodes here closer together like that. But one thing we want to do as well as these instances, like I just pointed out, we want to take this scale and we want to randomize it. So we're going to drag into scale and we're going to type in random. And we're going to go for a random value. And we want to make sure that this does it across all of the axes equally. So we're going to change it from vector to float. And now all we have to do is make sure that this is in the scale. It should actually be connected, okay, if it's come out. So this random value here with a float, and we obviously don't want it to be 0. So let's take that and make it like 0.8. So we got a range going from 0.8, so which is only 80% of the original size, to 1, which represents 100% of the original size. So the smaller I make this top value, you can see this is what we have. Okay, but we don't want to do that. We just want it slightly smaller, and that just adds a little bit more randomness to it. If you want to, you can always come up here to the distribute points and faces, and just kind of decrease this min distance until it fills up the spaces a little bit more so we have less gaps. So let's continue. What we're going to do now is we're going to actually make the little hairs over here. So we want to come over here, okay, from our instances on points, and we want to actually use our granules here. We want to distribute points on them. So what we're going to do, we're going to go Shift A, search, and get a distribute points on faces again. And this time we'll take the instances and plug it into the mesh. But what we're going to do, we need to realize these as instances. So we're going to go Shift A, search, and get a realize instances and place it before here, like so. And what we're going to do over here, just before our set shade smooth, we're going to go Shift A, search, and we're going to get a join. We're going to get a join geometry and place it on here. And now let's plug this points into here. So now you can see, we can see them along with the original berries over here. But the thing is, we want to change this as well from random to Poisson disk. Let's give it a distance of 0.3 and a max density of 100. And I might just bring that min distance down until we kind of have them almost 1 per berry here. So something like this. And once we have that in place, we can now scatter something on here. So let's go over here, Shift A, search, and let's get a instances on points, place it on here. And we're going to use a line to make our little hair. So let's actually go to the instances and select it and drag on it. And let's type in curve. And let's get a line. So curve line, click on it. And now you can see we have all of these lines in here, but they're kind of all going up. So what we can do is we can actually just take the rotation from our distribute points on faces and plug it into the rotation over here. And now the rotation is kind of following that a little bit better. Okay, so obviously we can also take the scale over here, just drag on it and the instances on points. Let's give that a value And now we can simply take this value and drag it down to shorten our little hairs. Okay, really cool. So now we've kind of created this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually take these down. Okay, so this is going to be everything to do with the hairs. This up here has to do with the berries, and then it all gets joined together over here. So this is its own system, and for that reason, we're going to grab these guys down here. We're going to go Control J, and we're going to join them. And I'll just grab this box, press N to get the properties, go to Node, and I'll give it a color. And I'll call it hairs. I guess this is making our hairs now. So from here, we're going to continue working on these hairs. So let's start by going Shift A search, and let's realize the instances. Again, we're going to get another realize instances. Place it on here after the instances on points. Then we're going to go Shift A search. We're going to resample the curve. Place it on here. And the reason we're resampling the curve, because currently this curve line we're using only has 2 points in 3D space. So that's not enough points to kind of distort it and give it sort of like a bendiness. So with this new resample curve, we can kind of give it some more. So I'm going to give it something like 30. And now we can distort them. So what we're going to do after the resample curve, and I'll just move these guys up a bit. After the resample curve here, we're going to go Shift A, search, and get a set position. Place it on here. And let's take this offset and let's give it a noise texture. And we're going to go with the color, so noise texture, and we've got the color input. And currently they're all kind of moved over to the side. So the way we fix this is to go Shift A search and get a vector math node. Place it on here, and we're going to subtract it. Oops, not multiply, subtract. And in all of these axes, we're going to go and make it 0.5, like so. And what we can do, we can come here and mess around with the scale. I'll probably leave it at 5 for now, but the way you can kind of downsize the intensity is by duplicating this subtract, putting it next to here on that same cable and changing it to a scale. So go all the way down, and if you keep scrolling down, you should see a scale. You can change it to scale, and then let's just bring the scale way down until we have something like that. So just a little bit of bendiness to it, nothing too crazy. Okay, that's really cool, but now we want to give some thickness to this. So the way we're going to do that, after the set position, we're going to go Shift A search, and we're going to get a curve to mesh, place it on here, and then let's take the profile and drag on that, and let's go curve circle, like so. And let's just take this resolution and make it 5, and then let's just bring this radius way down. Very, very thin. Now you can see we have these hairs here, but we're going to make them even thinner. And the way we're going to do this, we're going to take the radius here on the, okay, not the radius. Actually, the way we want to probably do this, I'm just thinking about it, is we want to actually, just before the curve to mesh, we want to go Shift A search and go set curve and then radius. So we want to get a set curve radius and put it before the curve to mesh. And then we're going to take this radius here, and there's something in Blender called the spline parameter. So we're going to drag on this. In the search here, we're going to go spline parameter, and we're going to go for the factor option here. And then we can control this by going Shift A search and getting a color ramp. Sorry, a color ramp. There we go. I'm going to get the color ramp and place it on this cable. So this spline parameter. And for now, I'm just going to move these other nodes up a little bit. So you can see this is what we have so far. And now let's actually invert it. So we're going to take this dark value here and let's make that much lighter. So kind of make the base a little bit thicker of the hairs. And then let's drag this guy up, down a little bit, and let's make that a bit darker in value, just kind of make it a bit thinner at the top. And then up here, we're going to click plus and add in another slider. And this one will make a bit lighter. Okay, just so the tip is a little bit more expanded. So the lighter this value is towards the end, the more big it's going to be. So you can see we can kind of control it a little bit. So drag this one up like so. Now you can see this is what it looks like, but there's still just a little bit too thick. So I'm going to grab this one here and make the value even more white, or maybe even more dark. There we go. And then this one over here, I'm going to select it and I'm going to make that a little bit darker as well. So we want something that kind of looks like this, as you can see. Okay, these are our little hairs. Okay, so I think we now have a berry. So let's actually go over to our materials tab. By default, we should have a material because we use the default cube. So I'm just going to call it berry. And I'm going to go plus and create a new material. I'm going to call it hairs. And what we're going to do over here, all of these nodes, okay, at the bottom here that we've created, I'm just going to take them and then drag them into this blue box here. And that's just part of the hair. So everything in here has to do with our hair. Okay, and this join node here just joins everything up. And then everything here is related to making our berry. So in fact, we can grab all of these guys over here, grab all of them and go Control J and put them in their own box. And we can grab this box and under our nodes here, we can also give them a color. So I'm going to go something like this maybe. And I'm going to give it a name and call it berry. Okay, so now we have everything really nicely organized here. We know exactly what does what in our node network here, as you can see. So how do we add the materials here? We're going to come over here to the curve mesh to mesh output just before the join geometry. We're going to go Shift A search and get a set material. Set material, place it on here. Let's come to the drop down and give it the hairs. And then let's go Shift D to duplicate it and place it on this long cable here. And this is our berry output, right? This is the thing that makes the berry. And with this one, we're going to give it the berry material. And with our berry material here selected, let's just go to the viewport display. And let's give that kind of like a pinkish kind of color. And with the hairs, we can kind of give it slightly yellowish kind of color. So now we can see the materials are applied over here. So now let's go to our render engine. Let's change it to cycles. I'd recommend you use a GPU if you have one. And under our max render samples here, we're just going to change it to 55. And then let's go to our shading workspace. Go into your camera view. Press Z and go rendered. And then you can go Shift A. You can go to your light options and add in an area light. I'm going to move one up like so. I'm going to go to my light properties and give it a strength of 120. And I'm going to increase the size like so. And then I will go ahead and just duplicate this light and have some coming from the back. Increasing the strength just for a bit of rim lighting. And maybe duplicate one and have it kind of coming from the side. Like so. There we go. And maybe one from the front. So you can do this however you want. I'm just kind of doing it like this. Just some basic lighting. Very, very simple. And then I'm also going to go to my world properties. I'm just going to make the world background just a little bit darker in value. So make sure to save as you're working. And let's start with our berry material. So select the actual berry. Go to your material properties and click on berry. And over here, what we're going to do is we're going to come to the color and we're going to kind of make it like this sort of raspberry kind of pinkish red. So something like that. And then we're going to come here to our transmission and we're going to give it a value of 0.75. And then we're going to grab our normal here. We're going to drag and we're just going to type in noise. And we're going to go with the noise factor over here. And we're going to go Shift A search and get a bump. Place it on here and make sure it's going into the height. And then just take the strength here and make it 0.08 or 0.06 should be fine. So I'm going to go 0.06 and I'm going to make the scale 4. Okay, so now we have a material here, but to make it look even a little bit more realistic, we can come over here, we can go Shift A search and get a volume and get a volume absorption. Place it into the volume. And we're going to kind of give this a reddish kind of color like this. And we're going to give it a density of 4. And that's the berry material. We're now going to click on the hairs. And if this, it's simply just going to be kind of like a sandy kind of yellow color. And we're also going to come here to the transmission and give it a value of 0.5, like so. I might make it a little bit lighter. And that's looking good, but one thing I might do is just reduce the amount of hair. So I'm going to select the berry. I'm going to go to geometry nodes. And I'm just going to come here to the hairs. And I'm just going to come to the max under the distribute points and faces. I'm just going to bring this max amount down a little bit. Okay, just till we have some less hairs on our berry. So something like that. Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do now is make sure to save. Let's go back to our layout and let's go render and render the image. And there we have it. So you guys can work on this as much as you want. I will be uploading this to my Patreon, so you guys can check that out in the description if you want to join that. And yeah, thank you for watching. I hope this has been a fun little Geometry Nodes project, and I'll see you guys next time.